Heck of a game, heck of a start. I thought Coach Woodson's team, Vegas, played a heck of a game as well. They kind of had our number a little bit early, and we had a heck of a second half. Defense came up with huge plays, touchdowns. That was big, of course. I thought The Rock called me there with a couple minutes to go, and he said, if you let them score, that sure would help our TV ratings. So we decided to make it interesting and
Welcome to the XFL Insider Podcast. This is your host, Matthew Tyler. We are back for the second episode. Got Jake and Drew with me today, and we also got a great guy named Chris. Chris comes from Ambush as well. Chris represents the Seattle team. He does some photography, and he's also a professional wrestler. Everybody want to introduce yourselves first? Let's start with Jake and just work our way to Drew and then Chris.
Not a whole lot to say. I'm just ready to get to today's action.
Today's action, last weekend's action. I mean,
a little bit of everything.
Everything. There was not a loss of content for the first week of the XFL.
Whether it be football or news, we got plenty to talk about today. I don't know if we can even fit it all in. Between fangirling ourselves out over here, we were too busy watching football to worry about the news, but we tried to catch back up.
Chris, how's the Seattle weather?
It's awful. It's completely awful. I was out on the road up until about maybe 15 minutes ago or so. And the higher elevation you get, the worse it gets, obviously. But even down where I'm at, I'm pretty lowland where I'm at, and we've got snowflakes the size of silver dollars out here right now. So
good grief! Oh, that should be a hell of a scene up there in Seattle for the home opener.
Oh, I hope so.
Seemed pretty intense looking at the reports as well as the pictures. You must have some really dedicated fans to come out for those game conditions, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I'd like to think that we've got one of the more passionate fan bases in the United States around here. Not to say that anybody's lacking in passion or anything like that, but I've seen some Seattle Seahawks games and the fans just sitting in the worst of conditions and still just as happy to be there as they could be. So it might have something to do with the ticket price. I don't know.
That's fantastic. I cannot wait to see that on TV. The XFL really needs that fan base. From just gauging the games I saw this week, as well as the game I attended, we definitely have the fan base, and we are ready to roll. All right, guys, so let's just get right into it. Let's talk about some news and updates. Most of what I've seen has really come from Twitter. A lot of the guys on here are very informative. People such as Mike Mitchell, as well as Isaiah Saros. Some of these guys took this data, and as well as press releases, and they've released a lot of good info for us fans. Tried to really keep it going on the XFL Insider page. Have you guys had a chance to view any of the stuff I've updated as we went on?
You're talking about like the rankings and like those graphics? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, rankings, or I'm talking about the firing of GM of the Brahmas.
If you're talking general news, like we've had an onslaught just today, not the weekend.
I think that may have come across the radar once or twice. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think I guess we can probably start off with the GM firing from San Antonio. So I think the XFL is playing this very smart. A couple of us were talking earlier. I think not putting out detailed information right off the bat is very intelligent. I think that keeps the media and fans jonesing a little bit for more information. It keeps a little bit of attention, more on the XFL, I think, than actually having some details put out there in order for it to maybe turn sour and somebody be like, oh, well, that's the XFL for you, and have flashbacks to the early 2000s, right, where everybody's in the league's a criminal and all this mess. I think it's very smart to keep it private, say it's a private matter. So, whatever this guy did, it clearly broke the XFL's policy, and he's gone. Simple as that, right? Be very matter of fact. I think that's good PR play.
There's probably one thing that should be noticed, just so that there isn't any confusion. The media has said that Mike Sheehan, the guy that was fired on Tuesday by the Brahmas, He's not really the general manager. I don't understand that misconception. The way the XFL was structured in 2020 and even now, the head coach, Hines Ward, is also the general manager. The actual official title that Sheehan had was Vice President of Business and Event Operations. That does not mean general manager. So I think things should have been explained a little bit better to the media of how the XFL is structured, because 2020, 2023, it's been the same thing. The head coach is the general manager, and then they just surround a bunch of other people to handle a lot of the heavy work for them.
Very juicy information. Appreciate that. I'll tell you, from reading on Twitter, according to Don Harris, it was a personal matter. It had nothing to do with finances. Can anybody attest to this? Are we worried the XFL is going to drop out already?
No, absolutely not. I think
Not at all.
they've got enough money sunk into this from the beginning. The way the XFL closed out last iteration, they did it about as cleanly as you possibly could for what was going on. I think basically everybody took a loss. The NFL took a loss, NBA, all your major sports. I think the biggest threat, I think, to the XFL, and this is strictly my opinion, is the existence of the USFL and the way that they did the college draft. I mean, the XFL is not having any trouble paying players, paying coaches. The attendance numbers are good. There was a tweet out there that was getting the rounds about, I don't know if it was specific to the St. Louis market, but the XFL outperforming the Daytona 500 for viewership. The XFL, as far as a spring league goes, is in a very healthy place right now. And I don't think, firing not a general manager, as Jake pointed out, but anybody on the staff, really, I don't think that is cause for alarm. If we saw multiple people fall, then I might be asking questions. But, I mean, one-off is nothing.
I just kind of want to tie those points together. You were talking earlier about how they're handling it really well by putting it out there, making it clear it wasn't a financial thing and all that other stuff. And then you were just talking about the USFL. I've seen multiple USFL digs at the XFL over the last 3 weeks, including the one during the Super Bowl, which I think everybody knows about. They had the commercial and everything. Yep. I think the XFL has made a brilliant, very wise decision not responding to that and not engaging in that negative kind of advertising. They've kept their focus on their players, kept their focus on their product, kept their focus on what's going on. The fact that they're beating USFL to the TV marketplace in the first place. They have history. Ignore the USFL, ignore the negative BS that they're putting out there. Just focus on what you're doing. I think they're doing a really good job with that. So I think overall, the media that they're putting out is very good.
Yeah, I think, and the only reason that I brought up the USFL at all, really as a threat to the XFL, is they were very intelligent with how they did their college draft, right? They're literally doing an NFL draft, but at a lower level to say, hey, if you guys strike out at the NFL, we own your rights. So they're literally reaching forward and grabbing talent from the XFL.
No doubt. And the curious thing about it is, how's the NFL going to play all this?
Right.
We're going to see some roster increases on the practice. So who knows? I tell you, I appreciate the opinion. Great. I also appreciate the information about his real position within San Antonio. Let's move on, unless anybody has anything else. So next up, we're going to cover San Antonio. It's going to host the championship game. If you're an XL fan, you've seen this. You know that it was happening the day that it happened. I personally am very happy about this. I think San Antonio is a great market. The fans are huge, as we saw on TV the other day, as well as how they handle, the publicity of the new market. It's held very well. Any opinions on this?
I'm with you. I think it's a fantastic move. Obviously, the numbers in San Antonio as far as the fans, I mean, you didn't even have to wait for the attendance announcement in San Antonio. When you heard the fans on TV, it was just otherworldly. They were absolutely fanatical. Close to 25,000 people there on an opening weekend in a sports-starved city like San Antonio. Like, they have the Spurs, yes, but that's all they have. And they've been so hungry for football. Why not throw them a bone? Like, they're coming out and supporting. You've got several other teams that are coming out and supporting in droves. So, and especially it being all your contenders, right? Or at least from preseason projections, having pretty good support. Why not throw San Antonio a bone? Give the fans what they want. Give them more football. Build the brand in that area. Move it next year. It'll be all good.
I think it was kind of a no-brainer. You know, they've got the hub in Texas. There's 3 teams in Texas. Football is obviously hot in Texas. No-brainer. Keep it in San Antonio. Like you were saying, throw them a bone. Let the marketplace develop, and then move it next year if you have to.
And, you know, the last time the XFL was even able to hold a championship game was back in 2001, and that was in Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles. You know that one of these days, if the XFL, and you know for certain, if things keep going as they are, the XFL will be successful. You know one of these days, going down the road, that championship game will be back in Memorial Coliseum. So the fact that you've got this hub situation with 3 of the teams in Texas being able to play in their own home markets instead of, you know, kind of the way that the USFL has kind of branched out their hub system to 4 cities. Everyone's playing in their markets in the XFL, and if things continue to go well, like I said, Memorial Coliseum championship game will happen down the road. We don't know when, but it will happen. So having the first one under this new era is a smart decision.
So the date of the game is May 13th. Should be a good time. Weather will be beautiful. The fans are going to be rowdy. And I'm excited just to go tailgate if I do not actually go to the game. Next week, we should have a guest, R.C. Woods, on. She's a big San Antonio leader in the fan game. She has the first women-led XFL fan club. So we look forward to talking to her more next week. So next up, let's discuss the beer snake, fellas.
I'm so ready for this topic.
Don't take the beer snake.
Don't step on snake. Don't confiscate snake. Just leave it alone.
Just leave it alone. I was about to say the same thing.
We will see this the rest of the season, no doubt.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily true. So DC has a huge decision to make because obviously beer is not the only drink that contributes to the beer snake. Probably over half, I would imagine, of viewers were wondering where in the blue hell did they get all these lemons? There was a vodka drink that came with lemon. I would imagine it's some sort of spiked lemonade, right? That came with these like half lemons, so you could squeeze it into your drink. And as soon as beer snake got confiscated, the war was on. Like it was, sour grapes is a term, but lemons getting thrown at people on the field. That's especially with what happened afterwards, with it being a pick 6, like the very first play back from the stoppage of play. This is legendary. So DC has a decision to make. They either stop selling the drink and or stop giving lemons with the drink, which cuts down on the beer snake, or they outlaw the beer snake completely and ruin one of the funnest things that XFL has ever had going for it.
I don't think they can do either. I think they'll have a riot on their hands.
Right.
Agreed.
With how meme-worthy the lemon, I mean, you see logos being redone with lemons on the defender's shield, and now lemons are a part of the lore of the team.
What do you guys think about the decision they made to leave all that on the field? Like we were talking about that here at the house a bit. They didn't pick up a single one. They just left them on the field. That's pretty dangerous.
Scared. I mean, they didn't want to put themselves in that line of fire either. They even moved the players at one point.
Yeah, I think so. With how many lemons I imagine were on the field, you probably can't stop and pick them all up. I would imagine XFL Operations Center had a huge debacle on their hands and were just like, F it, leave it. Like, hopefully nobody gets hurt. But
Was The Rock present for this game? Do you guys know?
He showed up for it. I don't know that he stayed the whole time. I think he may have stayed the whole time.
Were all 4 games, at least until the third, because they had on camera that late in the game at each game.
Very impressive. That's how you know they're proud of their league, guys. But they should definitely let the fans have the beer snake.
Yeah, and somebody making $12 an hour on a security contract decided he or she was going to ruin the fun for everybody and made the decision to confiscate the snake. That is not how you grow the game. I'm sorry if that beer snake runs over into every suburb outside of DC and there's lemons along the way like a yellow brick road. You let the fans have the damn beer snake.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
Yeah, to close with it, I will say in 2020, that was a staple mark of the XFL. Whether you liked it or not, you watched that game, you saw that beer snake. And even now, I still have videos where I recorded it because I was impressed. Not much of a beer drinker myself, but I'm impressed.
I think what impresses me the most about that is how much media attention that the beer snake itself has got in both its appearances. 2 appearances, beer snake wins both appearances. I mean, now you can't go to a DC game and expect there not to be a beer snake. They're going to stack some kind of cups. Something is happening related to alcohol in that stadium from here on out.
I mean, that sounds like a T-shirt. Beer snake 2-0.
It totally is a T-shirt. Great memes are coming from this as well.
Absolutely.
The XFL is known for having rowdy fans. It's just the way it is. I attended the Houston game, and we sat in the section 101 for me and my girlfriend, and it got pretty rowdy at certain points as well. The security came and stood close by to stop the fun, but it was a great time. I wouldn't take it away from nobody. Next up, let's discuss the TV ratings.
This one's definitely interesting. I just happened to dig this up throughout Twitter and a couple websites. The early game on Saturday, Vegas Arlington, aired on ABC. It got 1.535 million viewers and then getting a 0.29 among the 18 to 49 demo. And then the evening game on ESPN, Houston Orlando, got 750,000 on ESPN with a 0.23 in the 18 to 49. And apparently it also simulcast on FX. And they got an extra 390,000 for a 0.11 rating among that same demo. So we're talking, 1.14 million viewers overall just on that one. So let's go to...
That didn't include streaming ratings, right?
That does not include streaming. That this is, I mean, the number could be way higher. It's just the information I haven't been able to find, including streaming.
Understood.
So let's go to Sunday afternoon game between the Battlehawks and the Brahmas, which also aired on ABC. 1.57 million. And here's an interesting little tidbit on that as well. Is just in the St. Louis market alone, it outdrew the Daytona 500. So the game drew 111,000 viewers for a 5.6 rating and a 19 share against the Daytona 500, which had 69,000 viewers, 3.7 rating with a 13 share. So that with the fact the Battlehawks is back, it's big media news, and considering that we're taken away from the NASCAR audience is big. So let's go to Seattle, DC, that aired on ESPN. That one drew 1.06 million, 0.29 in 1849, and that particular game was 6th overall for the night in viewership. So that it's big. It is down from week 1 from 2020. I didn't have all that data, but I was able to find data on Twitter comparing it to week 1 of the USFL last year. So on the Saturday game between New Jersey and Birmingham, which aired on Fox, they had 1.757 million on Fox, and then simulcast on NBC, they had 1.31 million viewers for a total of 3.067 million. The Sunday games, Houston, Michigan on NBC got roughly about 2.2 million. The other Sunday game between Philadelphia and New Orleans on USA drew 771,000. And then the Monday game between Tampa Bay and Pittsburgh, which aired on Fox Sports 1, drew 268,000. So if you're thinking and looking at all these games that happened in week 1, they've at least outperformed Philadelphia, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh in the USFL. And I think that it could potentially increase further over time.
I agree with that. I think you'll see it increase. And just to be clear, so that obviously the USFL hasn't started yet this year. right? So those are numbers from last year's USFL Week 1, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so highly competitive in terms of viewership, the XFL. When you have your first week on a weekend as big in NASCAR as the Daytona 500, I mean, they call that the Super Bowl of racing for a reason. They get a lot of viewers nationwide. So if you're making a dent in a market that's as major as St. Louis, that usually has a pretty high viewership of NASCAR, you're really making headway. I don't know how the transition is going to be once the USFL starts up. It'll be interesting to see kind of how numbers transition from the XFL to the USFL. And it'll really be interesting to see next year which league gets more numbers. But overall, the XFL highly competitive and a very good showing this weekend for as far as viewership goes.
And something I could potentially add on here. So I'm not sure if the XFL was the ultimate factor, but just with the viewership that the Daytona 500 had, they lost 8% of its viewership compared to last year because they drew 8.2 million this year.
There's a lot of State of the Union podcasts that are very sad this weekend regarding NASCAR.
Sometimes you got to let it go. We got spring football back. It's time to time to watch the new game. No, sir, it's not. It is significant. And anything you see, especially the first week, should carry on, in my opinion, because we brought the heat this weekend, guys, and this last weekend, and we're going to talk about that very soon. Is there anything y'all want to add before we move on?
I think the numbers are straightforward. They tell a good story. The league is healthy, and anybody who says otherwise is straight hating.
Haters going to hate. Quit sipping that haterade, boy. Don't do it.
Get your tay-tay on. Hate. Yeah.
All right, so last up in news and updates, I just wanted to talk about some player acquisitions and drops. I don't have too much data on this. I hope you guys have some ready. Just had a couple different series. I seen yesterday from the Brahmas, they had a couple moves, as well as the Roughnecks had a couple moves. I'm going to talk about a couple. You guys can pick up on some too if you have them. No worries if not. So I see this one is a series of moves were made by the Brahmas yesterday. They placed Landon Akers on the reserve list, or I guess injured reserve, and they signed Dan Williams, which is a wide receiver, Maya Tuahima, which is a guard, and Steven Denmark, who's a defensive back. They released tight end Jamal Pettigrew. Next up, I saw the Roughnecks. They signed an offensive tackle, Ryan Pope. Pope spent some time with the Seattle SeaDragons, played for the Packers, Rams, Jaguars, Lions, and Broncos. In my opinion, our Roughnecks already have a pretty good offensive line, and this is just going to add to the list. You guys got any other moves you want to talk about?
Yeah, I've got one. On Monday, the Battlehawks had parted ways with defensive back Tim Harris, who actually had some injury issues last week, hence why he was inactive for week 1 against the Brahmas. They waived him, and they signed safety Jonathan Alexander, 23 years old, 6'3", 211, from Fort Worth. His nickname is the Big Ape. I'd like to know why they gave him the nickname. He spent the offseason in 21 with the Chicago Bears. He had transferred to Charlotte in 2021 after spending 2 seasons at Kansas State. Started 8 of 9 games with 54 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles, and a touchdown for Charlotte back in 21. And he was the 18th selection in the 2022 XFL draft and had spent time in training camp before being waived on February 9th. So we're bringing back a former draftee.
Dang, you had a couple? So you were all over that, man.
Yeah, he had it going.
A little bit more insight than me. I think for me, I'm not necessarily watching big roster moves. I'm watching a couple of injuries. So there were a couple. I forget who the other player was off the top of my head, but there's one big name that's in concussion protocol. It's Vic Beasley. So it'll be interesting to see if he sees the field, how bad his concussion is. And honestly, with that being a selling point of the XFL being a safer league, it'll be interesting to see what exactly concussion protocol is in the XFL.
He took that big hit on that interception this weekend, didn't he?
No, that was in the, which game was that? That was in the Arlington game. I forget what the guy's name is, but he hit his head pretty hard. He came out on Twitter and said that he was okay. Thanked everybody for their support. Glad they got the dub, all of that stuff. So he seems like he'll be okay. I don't know how intense the concussion was for Vic Beasley, but it was intense enough that he's not been practicing. He's still in concussion protocol, whatever that looks like in the XFL. So,
do we know what play he got that concussion on?
No, I will take a look real quick.
I'll say while he's looking, next week we hope to have more access to some media information. We're kind of just waiting on some approvals, and then we should have some better, more accurate results. I know Jake, he's got the hook up to the Battlehawks right now, so he's bringing the heat on that. The rest of us, we're trying, but certainly we'll have our access soon. All right, you guys want to add anything else to that before we just move on?
I just got an injury report.
Oh, check it out.
Houston. So we have a little bit of information on Houston as well. Did not participate in practice. Offensive guard Darwan Parker has a hamstring issue that probably highlights why Houston picked up a offensive lineman this week. I would say that's kind of a big deal. Darwan Parker is one of the big anchors on that offensive line. And if Houston is picking up an offensive lineman and he didn't participate in practice, that tells me probably the hamstring's a little bit more serious than we thought going into the week. Limited participation, Travell Harris, who had a couple of really big grabs to keep drives going during the first week. He's limited participation with a groin injury. So a couple of people are going to have to step up this week on the offense for the Roughnecks. But, I mean, the way they played in the first week, shouldn't see a huge drop off.
Oh, well, I like it. Thank you guys for the reports. Next up, we're going to just quickly review last week's matchups. We don't want to get too in-depth on everything because we still want to cover next week's matchups, but we have to highlight what happened and the winners at least. It was a good week of football. I enjoyed every game played. Everyone had a different aspect of comeback win or just a total obliteration. First, let's just talk about Las Vegas Vipers at the Arlington Renegades. Arlington pulled it off. Last minute or last second.
Stars are dual protecting inside out. One-man rush, crossing route, open, and a huge gain, and a touchdown for Vegas, and Sinque Sweeting. With 8 seconds to play. Perez pulled it back, gets taken down. TJ Barnes.
Vipers had a good game. Can you guys tell us some more about it?
And Chris, you want to take this one, man?
So that was the only game last week I didn't watch in its entirety. I had to record that one. It was competitive as hell, though, from the part that I saw. It seems like Vegas has got their stuff together. I mean, I'm gonna have to defer on this one. I didn't watch the whole game, but
gotcha. Sorry, I didn't mean to set you up for failure there.
Not at all, man. Not at all.
So from what I saw with Arlington and Las Vegas clearly to me was the better team overall. Arlington's offense is it's like if there was a level of functioning beneath anemic, you could label Arlington's offense as that. Just zero production. They stayed in, or they didn't stay in anything. They were actually pretty multiple with their formations on offense, but it didn't do anything for them. Their offensive line was not very good. Their run game was not very good. It was really, really bad offense. If you remember anything about the XFL in 2020, you remember the first week, everybody was like, where the hell is the offense? This is exactly what it looked like during 2020 for Arlington. It was just bad. The Vipers, on the other hand, really should have been up 20-something points in the first half because their defense was flying around. Their offense was making plays. But, man, looking at this game, if you watched, it really was a tale of two halves, right? I mean, Arlington's defense.
The turnover didn't help either.
The what didn't help?
The two turnovers that definitely didn't help.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. But in the second half, so if the first half was all Vipers, the second half was all Renegades, right? Excuse me, all Renegades defense.
Oh, for sure, defense, no doubt.
Pick sixes, fumbles, sacks. I mean, how many sacks did they have? Luis Perez was running for his life. There's basically nothing he could do. And then even on the very last play where the Vipers were going for 4th and 15, the conversion using that unique rule to the XFL, Luis Perez made one hell of a throw over the middle, and it was to Geronimo Allison, and he got absolutely waylaid in the middle of the field, hard enough that the ball popped free, ultimately giving Arlington the win. But man, talk about dominant defense. I mean, for you to basically pitch a shutout until the very end and then win the game on a defensive play, that makes a statement. So Arlington's not going to be at the very bottom of any power rankings coming this week just because of their defense. But that offense is bad enough that they're still going to be down there pretty far, I think.
Yeah, I foresee this game being a pretty good one between us next week, Houston and Arlington.
That makes one of us.
I think it's really going to be a true test for us as a Houston team to see what we can do. And because that defense is nothing to play around with when they come. Speaking of Houston, let's just roll right into the next little tidbit here. Houston Roughnecks versus the Orlando Guardians. The Guardians came to the Roughnecks, and they left the Roughnecks very sad. Drew, I know you got something to fill us in on this one.
It was if you paid attention to the article that myself and Jesse Dice did, Jesse being our Orlando correspondent here at Ambush Sports Network, he made his prediction. I made mine. I think if you remember, my prediction was something like 29-13 for Houston. So I was pretty close. I kind of knew the game was going to go how it did. Orlando didn't really seem to have any answers. I mean, they started off faster than Houston, but Houston started off in a very soft zone trying to figure out what they were going to look like. And once they figured out what they looked like, they locked in and really stole the show in terms of both offense and defense. So it wasn't particularly close. Honestly, the score makes it look closer than it really was. And that's saying something with Orlando, only having 12 points. So the big question for Houston going forward is, can Brandon Silvers clean up the sloppy interceptions? That's kind of been a hallmark of his.
I can answer those.
Yes, Chris.
Listen, as a Seattle fan and watching him play down here in 2020 and watching all of the preseason stuff that we had access to, no, he can't. The guy, he just crumbles under pressure. It's just so sad to watch.
I've got to disagree with you on that one, Chris. I've watched Silver since the AAF days, and I'm impressed by how he's grew professionally.
Well, I mean, you've got to with all the opportunities the man's had, but I'm telling you, you can watch him in practice. Watch him in practice. He's a totally different player once fans are in attendance and there's another team standing across from him.
Well, I'll tell you, I sat for the post-game interview, and I put it on Facebook Live through the XFL Insider Podcast. And in the interview, he called himself out on the picks. And he couldn't remember how many he had, but he said, I messed up. How many picks did I throw? So if he knows he's inconsistent, I think he can clean it up, especially with the coaching staff they have.
I don't know. See, I think I kind of agree with Chris. I left it as a hanging question just for entertainment purposes. I'm not of the belief that Silvers can fix it. So I made reference before on the previous podcast that I played defensive back in high school. I played a little bit of quarterback as well. Doesn't make me a pro at it. Matter of fact, I was a backup. I didn't even start. But as a quarterback, if you don't remember how many interceptions you threw in a game, there's a problem. Like, quarterbacks have to be perfectionists. They have
just about to make that point.
For you to be like, oh, LOL, interceptions, and that's not me mocking Silvers. because he's not the only quarterback to ever have that attitude towards it. But that, to me, that just highlights a problem. And again, referencing the previous podcast, I was a Cole McDonald fanboy coming into the season. So he came in, he had a rushing touchdown. He didn't look all that great with his first couple of throws. Doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, but Houston is pretty deep at quarterback. They've got some talent there. I think they could change their offense if they needed to facilitate somebody like Cole McDonald. It's going to be interesting to see how much of a leash Silvers has, especially with a defense like Arlington coming to town next week.
I love the takes, guys. And regardless of what happens, the next man's up. And I'm here for the team. So appreciate the takes. Moving on, Jake, it's time. Can you tell us about the Battlehawks?
Yeah, I tell you, this one was a nail biter from the beginning. It's like there was not much scoring between the two teams in the first three quarters. Field goal here in the first, field goal here in the second, field goal in the third, and then all of a sudden you get all these scoring in the second half.
Completions for McCarron. 180! 3rd and 7. McCarron has a receiver. Caught! Touchdown St. Louis, and a flag on the play. That is pro.
Hey, guys, I'm trying to catch him. He's out of breath. He's fighting guys. He's scrapping, talking to his dad down here. Unbelievable catch. The concentration. Walk me through that play.
The good Lord blessed me with some hands. I made it happen. Shout out to my boys down in Florida, man. NSB convention. My nieces, Hadley and Colvin. All the good Lord, man.
What'd your dad just say to you right there? That's unbelievable.
Good catch. That's what we do, though. That's what we built for.
Heron ultimately ended up finishing 18 for 26 for 190 yards. The Brahmas, Jack Cohen, went 25 for 36 for 207. On the Battlehawks end, Brian Hill led the rushing charge, 6 attempts for 55 yards. On the Brahmas end, Kevin Ballage led the charge, 24 attempts for 84 yards. And then, there was a lot of effort done on the receiving end, but the big one that you have to think of from the receiving core was the Battlehawks, is Austin Prohl, and the plays that they made in the last 3 minutes of the game. Both of those receptions going to him for the win, for the 18-15 win. They've had some hiccups on the defensive end. They both had fumbles, which, never know what to expect there. But ultimately, the game just came down to 2 Austin Prohl receptions to secure the victory for St. Louis. And the great thing that I noticed afterwards, looking at social media, was the father-son embrace between Austin and Ricky.
Cool moment.
Yeah, it was a cool moment. And then the interview with AJ McCarron went bonkers viral.
Yep.
One of your biggest whys was your family playing in front of your boys. You sprinted over here. Here they come right now. He's going to get you. What does that mean to be able to do this in front of them?
It's awesome.
Look at those guys.
Man, it means a lot. So.
That's why you made the decision, brother. Congratulations. That's beautiful. Go spend time with your family.
And even The Rock gave props to AJ McCarron for that, because he said that's why we're here. That's what we're here for. Yep,
absolutely. And a lot of people are while we're talking about AJ McCarron, because he's an obvious, one of many obvious targets for this. There's a lot of talk on Twitter, or really any XFL fan group. I've seen the point made. We're player 54, except for this guy who spent this much time in the league, and this guy who came down off of this roster, and guys like Geronimo Allison played for the Packers, and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, to anybody that's saying that, the fact that they're in the XFL right now and not on an NFL roster is exactly why Player 54 is a big selling point for the XFL. They're trying to help these guys get back to where they were or give them an opportunity to get to where they've never been. Not really sure why there has to be a whole lot of hate, but a story like AJ McCarron really doesn't do anything but build the XFL's position in what they're doing.
I really like how the league isn't hiding that either. With USFL, I hate to keep referencing them, but I hate that they kind of ignore the fact that there's a league above them and that the NFL even exists. This whole weekend, the XFL was just, talking about opportunities and how can we get you to the next level and how can we get you to where you were or where you want to be. I like that they're not hiding that.
Yep.
Yeah, and, the XFL is more than just opportunity for the players. It's opportunity for the coaches. It's opportunity for their families. It's opportunity for new media. It's opportunity for the people working in the concession stand. It's opportunity for the refs. There's a lot of different things that are going where a lot of people are benefiting. So everyone should remember that.
Places that have been ignored in the past.
Yep. No doubt. And you can see that. Go to a game, watch some videos online, check out the fan groups, and it will all show you the true fandom that the XFL has and what it's about. I'll tell you, I went to Houston, and I had not one negative experience my whole time at that game. Go to an NFL game and see how that goes for you.
Yeah, good luck standing in the cold, waiting to go to the bathroom.
Everybody was super nice, great experience. That was my first time being in Houston, but you know what? I loved it, and I'll be back a lot. So, yeah, guys, just remember, the XFL, it stands for opportunity, and that's for the players and everybody else. All right, we got the last game of the week, the DC Defenders versus the Seattle SeaDragons. Chris, do you want to share your take on that?
Well, so, I've got a lot of differing opinions on the game. Obviously, I'm disappointed that we performed as poorly as we did in the second half. I found it interesting that they made kind of a highlight in the during the game on commentary to point out the fact that the coaching staff was cycling a lot of players in and out, not necessarily just playing the starters all day. I think that's what is going to – I think that's going to be kind of a linchpin when it comes to seeing the difference between how we played week one versus how we play this week. I think that, the first game jitters are out. I think the coaching staff has cycled who they wanted to cycle through, see who plays how during a big game moment, and they're going to have a more reliable roster of guys that they know this guy's going to perform well in this situation. This guy's going to perform better in this situation. I mean, we switched quarterbacks out during the game when we didn't have to. Also, you have to take the Seattle marketplace into account. Loudest arena in the world. We may not hold the record consistently or whatever, but we've said it more times than anybody else. I think that the fan base here is rabid. It's nuts. In 2020, I dived, feet first into the Seattle Dragons pool. There's a lot of fans around here that are very dedicated to the team, and they have not had an opportunity to show that to the world yet, and they're about to in droves. I think the Seattle SeaDragons of week one are not going to be the Seattle SeaDragons of week two. Danucci, it is what it is. He's throwing picks and stuff in the second half, which was disappointing. I think he's going to get his rhythm down. Him and Josh Gordon are a great pair. I mean, the two of them were just lighting the field up at the beginning of the game on Sunday. I mean, what did Gordon have? Like 6 catches in 75 yards or something like that.
Yeah, he was balling out.
I mean, it was just a fantastic game between the two of them. I really think that you're going to see a different team this week, and I think that the crowd is going to be a factor that the Battlehawks are going to have to address.
Yeah, DC ended up pulling it off 22-18. DC looked good. I'm not going to lie. I'm a big Jordan Tamamu fan, and he really showed up in the times he could play. So I enjoyed it. Anybody else got any takes on it?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit on the other end of the spectrum here. So to me, I don't really think either team looked all that great. Chris touched a little bit on Seattle. I will agree. Hey, they've played a lot of different players, right? Just about at every position, seeing what they have, seeing who performed in certain situations, swapping quarterbacks when they didn't have to. But that offensive line is highly suspect right now, if you ask me. Watching how hard Ben DiNucci had to run for his life was almost as hard as, if not maybe harder than Luis Perez had to run for his life against the Renegades during the second half especially. Good grief.
I can't disagree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, if that offensive line doesn't shore up, man, there's going to be some hard times ahead for Seattle, and you can have all the Josh Gordons in the world that you want to, and it's not going to make a difference if you can't throw them the damn ball, right? With DC, their offense was pretty suspect too. Like,
no doubt, on certain degrees.
Yeah, so I mean, Ta'amu played about as well as he could, but it almost seemed like he was uncomfortable.
Like, I mean, they swapped him in and out. To me, that was part of their downfall. I'm sorry to interrupt, but they kept swapping. You know, they wouldn't let either one of these guys get hot, and arguably they're saying that's the reason they pulled the win off. But in my opinion, play one guy and see what happens.
I'm not a huge fan of playing a dual quarterback system either. There are situations where you can have success with it, but in my opinion, the better quarterback, or we'll say the quarterback that made the offense go the best, was D'Eriq King, coming off the bench and running the ball. He added a different layer that I think Seattle probably wasn't expecting. I think they prepared for Ta'amu, knowing that he's more of a pocket passer and only runs when he has truly a lot of space. And then D'Eriq King came in, and they had trouble adjusting because they didn't practice against it.
I agree.
So he looked good. He picked up yards on every carry. I mean, right. He did great.
He was electric on most of his runs, and I don't expect that to be the case again next week. I think now that teams have seen it, they're going to have plenty of tape. They see what they're trying to do with D'Eriq King, and teams will be a little bit more prepared. But some question marks on the DC Defenders side, question marks on the Dragons side. I just don't see either of these teams as being very, very good.
Well, we will see what happens this following week. We got another exciting weekend and Thursday night of play.
Let me make one quick note.
Yes, sir.
I was talking about, the crowd and everything in Seattle. I had written this down. I don't know where I put it. I apologize. We've got I think 2 former Hawks playing on the SeaDragons this season, and I think there's 7 players on the team that are local kids. I know for sure Colin Kelly's from Kelso, and there's a couple of guys that went to UW and stuff like that. Adding into the fan base that's out here, you've got a lot of guys that are playing in front of family for the first time. I really think that's going to be one of the stories of the week this week, as far as the game goes.
It's always fun when you play for the local team, right? A lot of people have that as their dream coming into sports. It's as a kid, I always, up until I was 10 and didn't have any growth spurts yet. I was like, hey, I want to play for, the Houston Texans or maybe Dallas, maybe New Orleans, because that's the general area that I'm from. I played on the same high school.
Played out here during the COVID season for the NFL and never played in front of the crowd. Even he said in an interview, I think it was in the Seattle Times. I had it bookmarked, but he said something along the lines of I got it right here. It says Seattle's an awesome sports town and they love their sports. I'm pretty familiar with the stadium, but not with the 12th man. I'm really hoping they're here for us on Thursday. I've heard a lot about it, and I'm excited to see it in person.
Nice.
I'm excited for you.
Market too. Anytime you say 12th man in Seattle, you're going to get some sort of response. So
no doubt.
The Arlington Renegades pulled it off 22-20, beating the Vipers. The Orlando Guardians got beat 33-12 by the Houston Roughnecks. The St. Louis Battlehawks won by 3 for a score of 18-15 against the Brahmas. guys. Let's move on to the next week's matchups. We will start with our Thursday matchup, the St. Louis Battlehawks versus the Seattle SeaDragons.
Ooh, Jake and Chris, fight.
Let's do it.
I'll defer to you, Chris.
It's like I said earlier, I think that you're going to see a totally different team this week than you saw last week. I think last week there was a lot of feeling out. There was a lot of let's try this, let's try that. I think that this week you're going to see a more solidified team, not as many switches, not as much nonsense. The defense has got their stuff together. The offensive line obviously has holes like Swiss cheese. We've got to fix that. But if the Seattle marketplace fans are familiar with anything, it's an offensive line that sucks. So it's not anything that we're unaccustomed to. It's not anything that we're not used to dealing with. The team needs to fix the problem. The fans will be there and support in droves. That stadium is going to be deafening. I guarantee it. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to be happy to be reporting if I can live, but I'm definitely going to be doing a lot of photography. It's what Ambush has hired me to do. So me and Tommy will be there. We'll be knocking it out of the park and make sure you guys get all the insider info we can.
Sounds great. We appreciate that, Chris.
And, I'll just say I'll add a couple things to this. So Seattle's going into this game with Jim Haslett as coach, being his 8th year as a head coach. The last week's loss brings his career record to 64-64. So he's right at 500. And this isn't the first time that Haslett and Becht has met, because they were both part of the St. Louis Rams squad back in 2008 when Becht was tight end for the Rams, and Haslett was the interim head coach at the time, 4 games into the season. In addition, Becht also faced off with Haslett in New Orleans 3 times during his playing career, and each of the 3 meetings they had, his teams ended up beating any Haslett-led team. Considering the connections to whether it's Seattle or Washington in general, Chris did present a good point, but I will go in a little detail here regarding the players that have either were in Seattle or they were participated somewhere in Washington whatsoever. So thank goodness the Battlehawks sent a pronunciation guide, because this will help me not butcher the names. But one of them that came to mind was Taniela Tupou, who's a defensive tackle. He was born in Marysville and played at Washington at the college level, and then signed with the Seahawks in 2016. But he's also a 2-sport player, because he also played with the Seattle Seawolves in Major League Rugby back in 2020. Lakeem Williams, a linebacker for the team, is from Tacoma, who's also signed with the Seahawks, spending time on the practice squad from 21 to 22. Another linebacker, Travis Feeney, also has connections to the area. He attended Washington from 2012 to 2015, and during his time there, he recorded 125 tackles during 38 games that he was playing for the Huskies before being selected in the 2016 NFL draft in the 6th round by the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then, of course, one of them that played for the Seattle Dragons in 2020, the golden boy I just referred to either, Austin Proehl, who during that time caught the first touchdown pass in XFL history, February 2020. So we're
awesome.
well after 3 years after the fact, despite losing to the DC Defenders 31-19. Last but not least, another wide receiver, Gary Jennings, was selected by the Seahawks in the 4th round of the 2019 NFL draft, while running backs coach Art Valero was an offensive line coach for Seattle in 2010.
Wow, there's a lot of synchronicity on that team too.
Guys, next up, let's talk about the DC Defenders versus the Las Vegas Vipers.
So for me, this is one of the more entertaining, more anticipated matchups from my point of view for week 2, because both of these teams got either the right end or the wrong end of a shift in momentum in their game, right? Both teams showed flashes, offensive and defensive. Both teams were dominant at points in their game. One came out on top, one came out on bottom. So what are we gonna? I really think that Las Vegas is gonna pull this out because DC wasn't necessarily facing a very good offense, or at least a very proficient offense at this point, or at that point in the season in week 1. So I think they're going to have a more viable test for their defense in Las Vegas. And I think that Las Vegas is going to have a little bit more tape on what DC wants to do offensively, which is going to be the truth around the league, right? But with tape comes adjustments. And in my opinion, I think Las Vegas has fewer adjustments to make overall than DC does. I think Las Vegas's offensive line just needs to shore up a little bit of how they face pressures, because that's what that's what Arlington got them with, was pressures. And if they can shore that up, I think that the Vipers will beat the Defenders and will come out with a 1-1 team on both sides.
I agree. I think Vegas has got this one in the bag, but I was talking to somebody earlier today about this. I'm kind of hoping that one doesn't come down to a defense versus defense game where the score is super low and we don't really see any big plays. That's the only concern I have about that game.
I'm curious if Perez is going to come out ready to play, or if the Renegades defense was really that good last week.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Maybe it took the Renegades a little bit of time to adjust and decide, hey, we're just going to blitz the hell out of them because they can't stop it. Or did the Vipers just not really have a clue what to do against those pressures, and now they made the adjustments and they get back to making big plays like they did in the first half of the game. So little trifecta of points there that all play off of each other. So that's why, to me, it's a really intriguing game.
I think we see a lot of defensive pressure right off the bat, all the way through the first quarter, though, on both sides of the ball.
Oh, yeah. Well, Luis Perez is probably getting blitzed every play of his life for the rest of this season. So
the YouTube quarterback himself, we'll see what happens. I had faith in him years ago. Not sure he can pull it off now. But it'll be good to see if he does, because that's really another Player 54 story.
Definitely.
And I think I do have some takeaways I can potentially come up for this game. You know, both the Vipers and Defenders were in matches that were defined by very thin margins.
Yep.
Vipers lost by 2, Defenders won by 4. So, I mean, are they going to take what they learned in week 1, adjust from any mistakes that they have made in that game, don't make those again, and then adjust their strategies to potentially swing it in their favor? I mean, they've got to do something. I mean, I think based on what we discussed when it came to the over-unders on the points, both of those games ended up with over the, I think it was 35.5, 36.5. I mean, is it going to end up being in a situation where it's determined as small of a margin that they had in week 1, or is just one of these teams just going to blow things out of the water? It will be exciting to see what happens this week when they play.
Couldn't agree more there, Jake. Anything else before we move on to the San Antonio game?
I don't believe so.
All right. Well, next up, we got the San Antonio Brahmas versus the Orlando Guardians. Any big takes on this?
I think we're definitely going to see our first 0-2 team of the year in Orlando. Orlando was
Agreed.
not impressive to me whatsoever last week, and that's not just me being a Roughnecks fanboy. They just look bad, really. For
hey, listen, man, I'm from Orlando. I was an Orlando Rage fan, the first version of the XFL. I totally agree with you, though.
Yeah, it was bad. It was just low quality, and really, it makes me kind of ask questions of the Roughnecks offense with Silver's throwing 2 interceptions because, well, no, never mind. Silver's interceptions were on him. Those were just bad plays. But as far as the Brahmas go, they didn't prove to be inept. I think St. Louis's defense is pretty good. San Antonio's defense is pretty good. Obviously, you don't shut down a team with AJ McCarron and Austin Prohl without having a pretty decent defense. They gave it up in the end, but we're talking less than 20 points for both of those teams. So I think San Antonio is probably going to hold Orlando to 2 scores or less. I think the Brahmas will probably score 3 or 4 times. Somewhere in the range of probably like 26 to 8, I think would probably be a prediction of mine. I think San Antonio is just going to run away with it. And on top of that, San Antonio is just going to probably hog the ball. With Kalen Ballage having as good a game as he did against the Battlehawks, I see him getting fed a lot. In the first podcast that we did, I referenced San Antonio was probably going to run the ball. Seemed like I was right. Kalen Ballage had over 20 carries, had, was it 80-something yards, Jake?
It was a beautiful thing to watch.
Yeah, and Kalen Ballage is a freaking nature. Like, he just looked bigger than everybody else. I don't know if it was the Brahmas uniforms or what, but that dude's a specimen.
Yeah, he took the field control, no doubt. All right. Jake, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, any way you look at this, someone's going to end up being 0-2, and someone's going to end up being 1-1. The Brahmas definitely for sure have to figure out how not to shut down the last 3 minutes of the game because, whatever mistakes that they were making in that period of time, it made McCarron go clutch and help make the right passes and the right calls to secure that come from behind victory. So they need to review that tape and then whatever tape they can find from the Guardians game last week and adapt their strategy because you've got to play better 3-minute football than that because if you're not, you're gonna end up left in the dust because on San Antonio's end that had to have been not interesting but rather embarrassing to hold a lead and then last 3 minutes things just collapse. You can't collapse like that. So you definitely have to keep that in mind when going against the Guardians because if they can't seem to switch up their strategies in some way, they're going to end up 0-2. But at the same time, there were a lot of mistakes that was made on the Guardians end against the Roughnecks. You can't make the crucial mistakes that they did to get whooped that bad by was that 3 touchdowns? You've got to figure out something to improve your situation. Otherwise, just like I said with San Antonio, you're going to end up 0-2. But someone's got to win. Someone's got to be 1-1. Someone's got to be 0-2.
Yeah, no doubt on what you guys are saying. I agree 100%. I think San Antonio's got a lot more to play for just because of the way they lost last week.
And the fact that the championship's in San Antonio this year.
Yep, no doubt.
I think that's probably going to add some juice to that squad.
I don't know if Jack Cohen can lead them, though. I don't know if he can put it on his shoulders. And I guess we'll see in the long run. But with someone like Kalen Ballage, they should be good to go.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Cohn had some good moments. He had some bad moments. His accuracy was questionable, but he wasn't one of the higher rated quarterbacks coming into this season. I think a lot of people had question marks about him, maybe even his own coaching staff. I do think that it was a little bit of first game jitters, and now that he knows what to expect, especially against a defense that seemed as good as the Battlehawks defense did, he'll probably have a little bit better outing against Orlando, if I had to guess.
Hey, just a quick note: this game is in Orlando this week, right?
I believe,
yes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and they play at Camping World Stadium. That's where I played football when I was in high school.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Funny enough.
All right, so we ready for our last lineup matchup? I mean,
yes, sir.
Please cut that out. All right, next up we have the Arlington Renegades versus the Houston Roughnecks. And that's going to be in Houston for the second week. I'll be there as a media guide as well. I'm covering for Ambush Sports. Look forward to it. Last week I went, had a great time. Like I said, the nicest place ever, nicest people ever. Look forward to this game and also this review from Drew. Drew?
You don't think I'm opinionated or anything, do you?
No, sir.
So, man, the way I see this game, if Arlington can't score, they're about to get run out of the stadium. They had no identity on offense whatsoever. They got sacked. They couldn't hold on to the ball. If they don't fix something, they're really about to get just horse raced. With that said, their defense it seemed like it was really, really good. We'll find out a little bit more this weekend and see whether it was just the Vipers being bad or whether it was Arlington being really good. But you guys help me out. What was number 72's name? I can't remember. He basically dominated the game as a defensive tackle. I mean, Houston having such a good play or such a good showing out of their offensive line during week one versus a guy on the defensive line like that, that requires some game planning when you're running.
TJ Barnes, Georgia
Barnes.
Tech.
Yep. So that guy's an absolute unit. That requires a lot of game planning in your blocking scheme because you're going to have to double that guy the entire game. You can't leave him alone. And Arlington has already shown the willingness to blitz the hell out of people in week one. I mean, they sent every pressure they probably had in the playbook against Las Vegas, and Vegas couldn't stop any of it. So, are they going to cause problems for the Roughnecks offense? It's a vast possibility. I think this game, more so than any other game this coming weekend, has the potential to be a defensive struggle. I think in a defensive struggle because of the fact that Arlington has nothing on offense, at least to this point, I think that edges in favor of Houston. So Houston would be my pick, but I think it's gonna be interesting how it plays out.
Yeah, last week I said Houston by 16, and I was wrong, but I was wrong in the right way, so I'll take it. With names like Trent Harris and Deontay Kirkland, I think Houston's going to clear the ball on this. If we do, very confident in our run to the championship, just due to being able to play against this defense.
Yeah, I think at a point, so when you start off 2-0 in a league that has a 10-week span, you're looking at probably some major injuries causing your downfall, if anything causes your downfall. It's a little bit of a crapshoot across the league with what people are good at. Really, the defenses kind of had a good showing this weekend. Everything hit the over, but that doesn't necessarily indicate bad defense. To me, in my opinion, I think most of the games were fairly low scoring, relatively speaking. In the NFL, you see a lot of 30-point games and people getting blown out and stuff like that. And the lowest score this weekend was 12. The highest was 33. That's pretty compact for 4 games, 8 teams in scoring. So I don't know, man. It's hard for me to say anything other than Houston's going to win this one, just because Houston has some semblance of an offense. Going to highly depend on Brandon Silvers. Going to highly depend on the Renegades defense versus that offensive line. I don't see very many factors at play here. It's just going to be defense and who blinks first, probably. My money's on the Renegades to blink just because Houston has an offense.
Personally, I wonder how many field goals we're going to see this week. How many times are we going to kick it through the uprights? Last week when we were watching just the games in general, I noticed there were a lot more field goals than I thought would happen. So as it goes, is that going to play a factor in our game? Who knows, but it'll be cool to check out.
It definitely could. Arlington's kicker made 3 kicks this past week. None of them really looked like they were going to miss. He seemed pretty confident in his routine. Houston's kicker never saw the field. Houston has a rookie kicker. So are we gonna really see nerves get to a kicker like that? I mean, that very well could be a storyline that comes into play here.
Anything else to add, Chris, Jake, before we move on?
I think you guys are the subject matter experts there. You guys covered it pretty effectively. I think I agree with you that a lot of the game is going to depend on the Silvers. I don't think he's going to necessarily have a pressure issue, but if he's throwing interceptions all day, I think you guys are going to be in trouble.
Yeah, if they start getting to Silvers, I seriously think that we're going to start seeing a lot more of Cole McDonald, a lot more quarterback runs to try and put the defense in a guessing game and where they can't really pressure the run.
Which is smart.
Yeah, it would be similar to what DC did with De'Aaron King when Te'amu stopped getting huge results. And again, that's something that Houston has that the Renegades don't. So, still very interesting. I just think a lot has to go wrong for the Roughnecks to lose.
Agreed. We also have Max Borghi. And if you don't know him, you'll know him soon.
And I think one thing is to note from this game is someone has to win, someone has to lose. And it all ultimately finds out who's the best team in the state of the Texas, because it's still early to tell. And there's got to be some sort of trophy because Texas does everything big. So there better be a big honking trophy for the best team in the state of Texas this season.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, during the head coaches sit down for the conference, the 3 Texas coaches said basically whoever has the worst record has to buy dinner for everybody.
Good deal. I hope they get some
ultimately,
nice steaks.
You want to see the best team in Texas. The big trophy that the best team in Texas has at the end of the year would be the championship trophy. Yes.
Right. Yeah. I'm not trying to create any other trophies. Like, there's one trophy that matters. Nobody gives a damn if you're the best team in Texas if all of you only win one game and it's all against each other.
Drill, baby, drill. And that's all I can say about that.
Back to rig, baby.
All right. So next up, we're going to move to our own power poll, brought to you by Drew Wells. Drew's going to tell us his own take on the power poll. And, Drew, can you give us our first ever XFL Insider power poll of the week?
Yeah, so I went back and forth with myself and asked the guys here on the podcast which one I should go with, because I had 2 lists, and one list had all of the winners in the top 4 and all of the losers in the bottom 4, and I thought that's a little bit too mainstream and a little bit dishonest. So I made the other one, which is ultimately the one that you guys are going to get, with a little bit more analysis and just kind of my take on the first week and how it played out overall for everybody. So top of my rankings, again, not being a fanboy here, it was just the most impressive showing. It's Houston. They showed up on offense. Trent Harris had 4 sacks on defense, 4.5 sacks, if I'm not mistaken, XFL record. Brendan Silvers had the second most passing yards on top of a couple of touchdowns. He threw a couple of really dumb interceptions. One of them, I don't really think he ever saw the guy, but, you got to believe that the coaches that the Houston Roughnecks have, they're going to, get that fixed and really not allow him to rest on his laurels. So I put Houston at number 1, St. Louis at number 2. St. Louis's defense shut down not shut down, but kept from scoring what was the best rushing game in week 1 in San Antonio. If this game happened the other way around and San Antonio won and pulled it out, St. Louis would be down probably at like 5 in my power rankings. But the fact that they turned on the offense, were able to be clutch, and really honestly make a smart move in terms of offensive play, or make many smart moves in terms of offensive play calling against a soft zone defense, and really taking advantage of that. I think St. Louis definitely has something on offense. They may not know what it is yet. They definitely have a good defense, though. So they'll get tested a little bit more this week in the passing game, possibly. But I've got St. Louis at number 2. DC at number 3. Their defense really turned it up. They found a spark in D'Eriq King. Can they keep it? Don't know, but a good game or a good team to find out against is Las Vegas. And coming up next at 4, I've got Las Vegas. So for me, this is a 3-4 matchup in the league. It's really, excuse me. Can Luis Perez stay upright is the question for Las Vegas, right? The week 1, they performed pretty well on the offensive side of the ball in the first half and pretty abysmally in the second half. Their defense was good all the way through. Again, we don't know if that's because Arlington's just bad on offense or if the Vipers actually have a good defense. I would lean towards a good defense. Vic Beasley had a good game. Vegas, because of that defense and because of having some semblance of an offense, is in my top 4. It was a hard choice between them and San Antonio, who to put at 4 and 5. San Antonio had a competent game. It was a defensive struggle. They ran the ball very well. Their question is the passing game. And in football today, across all spectrums, not just the NFL, football is a passing game. It's the days of lining up in I formation and just running at somebody are over. So you've got to have some sort of passing game. Can Jack Cohn improve and step out of those game 1 jitters into a better situation, or into a better performance rather, this week is going to be a good question. He should have the chance to do that against Orlando. So they're sitting at number 5, San Antonio. Number 6, I've got Seattle. Their defense played pretty well for vast swaths of the game against DC. They reacted somewhat well when D'Eriq King came in. They were able to make some adjustments, just not enough. I think they probably focus on that a little bit more moving forward, especially later in the season when they play a little bit more of a dual threat type game. But I think they learned a lot in week 1. So the question for them, I think, as we discussed earlier, is the offensive line. So, are they fixing to get just boat raced by that Battlehawks defense? Are they fixing to turn it around? Because, if we're being honest, Seattle has the best potential for offense in the league. It's not even close. They've got 2 former pros on their receiver core. They've got Ben DiNucci at quarterback, former pro. So if they can protect Ben DiNucci, he can pick anybody apart. He's a playmaker. You saw that with the flip touchdown to Josh Gordon. That connection is really bright. So if they can block at all against Seattle, they could shoot up the power rankings really easy. So they're at number 6. Arlington, Donde Está offense. No clue where they get scoring power. They just seemed lost and inept on the offensive side of the ball. Great on defense. I kind of struggled a little bit with who to put it 6 and 7 between Seattle and Arlington, but Seattle does have offensive potential and can score points and did score points in their game. So I went with Seattle at 6 and Arlington at 7. And then bringing up the rear is Orlando. I only know Spanish and English, so I don't know how to say where the hell is your offense and your defense. So we're just going to leave them at the bottom and not really pontificate much more until they show some sort of potential.
No fiesta there.
Yeah, no.
All right. Thanks, Drew. Very insightful power poll. Loved it. We'll see how everything plays out this week. Next up, I want to cover a special segment. Every week, we're going to have our own Player of the Week brought to you by Ambush Sports, and that's at ambushsports.net. Ambush Sports is a sports network. Me, Drew, Jake, Chris, we're all part of it. Great place to be, great people to work for, great network of sports. Check them out, please. This week, we have 2 Players of the Week, one on offense and one on defense. Would anybody else like to introduce these guys?
Jake, you seem to be the one with the with all the stats. They're piled up in front of you. What do you got?
I hear the papers coming now.
Right?
Oh, I've probably shuffled and thrown a lot of those away. It's like my production studio was covered with papers, but I mean, there's not a whole lot more that I can say that I hadn't already said about AJ McCarron, because not only can he play clutch football in the final minutes of the game, but you can tell that he's a down-to-earth, homely person when he had his media interview after the game, where I mean, the viral moment was his kids coming up to him during the interview and then can't help but be emotional. I mean, you've done what you said you want to do in that regard. You want your kids to see you play while you still got time in your career. And ultimately, as I had already touched upon, that moment went viral, and it got a response, an honest response from The Rock, and said that is why we're here for. So, I mean, it's great. There's not much more I can add outside of that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the better passing performances really in week 1. I mean, really on and off the field. Offensive Player of the Week. You can't say anything different.
He was 18 for 26 with 190 yards and 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. So he had a really good week compared to the other quarterbacks. Next up was the Defensive Player of the Week, Mr. Trent Harris from the Houston Roughnecks. Drew, you want to tell us about Mr. Harris?
Yeah, so Trent Harris has had a lot of stops in his professional career. New England, Miami, New York, the Giants variety of New York, Baltimore, the Raiders, and now the Roughnecks. He has a Super Bowl to his name on his resume, right? But he finds himself in the XFL with an opportunity to really make a name for himself again, and he wastes no time in doing so. 4.5 sacks, absolutely dominated the entire offensive line for Orlando. I mean, number 33 was absolutely everywhere this weekend. It was hard to find a play where he wasn't being mentioned. very deserving of the Defensive Player of the Week.
Yeah, check him out on the post-game interview. I recorded that. That's on Facebook Live through the XFL Insider Podcast. He gave a pretty good interview after the game. He was very excited. You could tell he had that energy. I'm curious to see how he does for the rest of the year, but I believe he'll be a consistent face and name you're going to keep hearing. Jake, Chris, you got anything to add before we close?
I think both are great picks. You guys did a good job picking both of them this week.
And let's note that this was an ambush poll. The ambush took a poll on all these stats and players, and we came up with our own players of the week from what we believed were best. So this is what we came with.
Yep, AJ Perrin was the runaway leader on offense, and then on defense it was between Trent Harris and defensive back from DC by the last name of Joseph, who had 2 picks, one of them a pick 6.
Is it Michael Joseph, I believe?
Michael Joseph, that's correct, yep.
Yeah, both were ballers, and I'm sure we're going to hear some more names that we are not familiar with this weekend.
And then I know that poll was a real nail biter because, for the longest time until someone swayed the final decision on that, it was tied between the two at 3 votes apiece.
Yep. I'm sure our DC writers are upset that I was the one that swayed that vote. I didn't see the poll until late. They think I'm being a fanboy probably, but I mean, it's an XFL record. What Joseph did was good, but when you set a record, unless another record was set in direct competition that week, you're probably better off sticking with the record.
Yeah, I agree. You're correct. I was waiting on your vote. I knew it was coming.
Matt, it was never in doubt.
All right. Well, guys, that about wraps it up for the show. I appreciate you guys coming on.
Wrong you are, sir. We have to do bets.
Oh, I forgot the most important part. Drew, why don't you tell us about the bets? What do you think?
All right. So I'm actually going to pitch the first one to our 2 resident subject matter experts on the Battlehawks and SeaDragons. So the spread is SeaDragons are favored by 3. It's an even 3. So if they win by 3, it's a push. Total for over under is 37.5. So how do you guys feel about if you had to put your money on one team or the other, and then on the over and under, where would you put your money?
I mean, this week I got the Dragons this week. I've said it a couple of times now. I think that the team you saw in week 1 isn't going to be the team you see in week 2. I think that the odds are correct and that the money's on the Dragons this week.
Honestly, I don't believe with the 3. Matter of fact, I actually favor Battlehawks by 7. Let's have a repeat of 2020. Battlehawks 23, Dragons 16.
I like it.
Without Silvers at QB, I don't think we got a problem this week.
Ooh.
Ow.
Man, shots fired, homie. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
All right, great. So as we go through the rest of this, the rest of the 3 games, I'll pitch it to you guys first, and then I'll follow up with what mine is. Simply, I want to do it like that because I'm not saying anything about Battlehawks and SeaDragons. I'm not touching that under. I'm not touching 3 points with a 10-foot pole. I'm just going to let that ride. So no money spent by Drew Wells on the Battlehawks and SeaDragons. DC Defenders at Las Vegas Vipers. Just a quick aside. I've been kind of scrolling Twitter, and a few hours ago it was snowing in Las Vegas, and the Las Vegas Vipers official Twitter just put out a quick video of the snow falling at the stadium, and they put "what in tarnation?" So it is snowing in the Wild West, but I don't think that's going to be
Happy
happening.
Spring Football Day.
Yeah, I know, right?
I think that shows that language to make the rest of the league comfortable.
Yeah, right. I think I don't think that it's going to be snowing in Las Vegas when they play. But what do you guys take in with the Vipers being a 2.5-point favorite at home over the Defenders and a total of 37.5 for the over/under?
I think that's about right. I think the Vipers got it this week.
I'm starting to think that's a very real possibility of that being at least. I know you're supposed to match it or push it, but I really think that matchup will really be close, regardless of what mistakes may possibly occur in that game. And there could be a very good chance that it could be an over on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Vegas, I think it highly depends on if Vic Beasley's playing. I think this line will move a little bit closer to game time, but that'll be a major playing factor. Is Vic Beasley healthy? But as far as Vipers being 2.5-point favorites, I don't know that I agree with them being favorites in general with the way DC turned up their defense against Seattle in the second half. And I don't see the over happening personally. But I could be wrong. If Vic Beasley doesn't play, then anything can happen. The Defenders could score 30 points by themselves. I think the Vipers are probably good for at least 2 scores. So DC did find a spark with De'Aaron King, like we talked about earlier. I don't think that's going to be enough of a spark to get them through the rest of the season. Teams are going to figure that out. I probably would put my money on the under and probably put my money on DC against the spread.
I'm going to go with that same thought, Drew. I'm going to take DC by 8 on the under.
DC by 8 on the under. Okay, nice. All right, so moving on to San Antonio Brahmas at Orlando Guardians. So the Orlando Guardians get their first home game of the season after the Brahmas put on what so far is the envy of the XFL fan world as far as fan turnout with 25,000 people. So big Brahmas coming into town. Looking to avenge that loss in week 1 against Orlando, who just hopes to do something positive in week 2 because they really didn't in week 1. Point spread is 3.5-point favorites are the Brahmas at Orlando, and the total is 38 even for over-under.
Nice line.
Where are you going with your money, since you said nice line?
I am going Brahmas, and, I don't think I can go with the over on this one for sure. So I'm going to go under, and I will take Brahmas by 3.
So you're going for Orlando against the spread. Okay.
I got Brahmas too, but it's got to be more than 3. I mean, at least by 6.
Yeah. What about the 38 over under?
Sorry, just a minute.
You're good.
Okay, sorry. What now?
How do you feel about the over under 38 even?
I don't know. Matt, what did you say? Under?
Yeah, I went with the under.
Yeah, probably.
I can definitely see it. San Antonio was mainly a running offense. Orlando couldn't really seem to do much right. See the clock running a lot in those 2-minute periods at the end of each half. I can't argue with that. What do you think, Jake?
I think it's going to be an outright ugly game, but by 3, if I was actually betting on this action, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. And even then, there could be that rare possibility that Orlando kicks things into gear and maybe secure a victory by 1 or 2 points. So I'm not a fan of that, but I'm definitely the under on that because I think it's going to be a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that possibility up because this is like a classic betting trap game, right? It's a brand new league or a brand new iteration of the league. You're looking at 2 0-1 teams. You're not sure how good everybody is. Vegas puts it right close to a field goal. Either they're going to win by a field goal or more. And then they say something crazy like 38, like especially with not very much evidence from either team of true scoring offense. So I'm definitely taking the under. I think the Brahmas are going to win by probably 2 scores. Just because Orlando can't really do it. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll take that back. I think it'll be Brahmas by 1 score, but definitely more than 3.5. So I would pick the Brahmas to cover and the under for sure.
And then just something potentially to add in there. The reason why I went with my decision is, what if the Brahmas completely melt down in the last 3 minutes of the game like they did in week 1 against the Battlehawks? I mean, that would be ugly. That's why I said this could be an ugly game.
Wave your flag, brother. I love it. You're just stepping all over San Antonio after a win, man. I love it.
That's his job. That's what he's supposed to do.
Someone's got to channel Stephen A. Smith. I mean, come on. Shout out to your boy.
Right. All right. So the last game, Arlington Renegades at Houston in TDECU Stadium. So we're looking at the Roughnecks with an even 3-point spread for the favorites. And then a total over-under for 38.5. How do you guys feel about this?
Over.
Why do you say that?
Oh, we're bringing the heat. We're playing a good defense, and I think we have a multi-balanced approach on offense. So you're going to see some things happen if we do get stopped, and I don't think they're going to be ready for it.
Okay, fair take. So are you taking Houston to cover the 3 points?
I'll take Houston on the over.
Okay.
And I want to say, let's do it again. Houston's going to win this by 16. A score of 16.
Try it till it's right. I love it.
Let's do it.
I agree, except for the 16. Maybe 9.
I'm not a betting man. Remember, this is not gambling advice.
I disagree. It is. I think you should do everything that we say. Well, how do you feel about it, Jake?
You know, something like this, you know that there's high stakes because someone's got to prove themselves to be the best in the Lone Star State. So, I mean, in this case, someone has to emerge victorious. I wouldn't be comfortable with the spread. That's just something I just wouldn't bet on, but I would definitely go on the over on the points.
Gotcha. And then, Jake, how do you feel about the over-under and the spread?
That's the one I wouldn't touch.
Or not
that.
Jake, Chris, yeah. Sorry, bud.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not touching that one.
No?
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to – I think – again, I think it's by 9, but I'm not touching the over.
Gotcha. I think I would jump all over that point spread, hammer the hell out of the Roughnecks. But Vegas is very much playing both sides of the fence yet again this week. They said it would take a couple of weeks for them to really settle in and get their stuff together. But when you say Roughnecks are 3-point favorites and then you put the over-under at 38.5 against a team that didn't perform on offense at all in the Renegades, you're literally saying either it's going to be a close one or it's not, and Houston's just going to beat the crap out of them. Really?
Which is more likely.
Which is, I mean, it is likely. but Vegas is trying to win whatever money is out there, and they're thinking they're going to have to come out even on this one because they're not 100% sure. I would not touch the over. I think I would go under, but I would jump all over the point spread. Roughnecks -3. I think that's the way to go.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate everybody's takes, and I'm sure everybody at home does as well. Like I said, personally, I don't gamble much. I do like the betting lines to just see what we're looking at, though. So, thank you, Drew. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Anything else to add before we close it, fellas?
Don't believe so. I want to. Well, I guess there's one thing. I want to thank all of you guys, all three of you guys. Matt, doing your hosting gig, not an easy thing to do, facilitating a bunch of hooligans like me. Jake, love the fire he takes, man. And Chris, thanks for coming on. Thanks for supplementing the podcast, man. Look forward to having more conversations with you in the future. You were a fantastic guest today, man.
Couldn't agree more.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it, fellas.
Check back for more of the Ambush staff to be on the podcast. Really, if someone wants to come on, we're going to have them, whether it be a guest or an Ambush staff member. So please check back. No telling who will end up on the podcast before it's over with. Drew, I appreciate you, man. You got some really good takes, very informative. I've heard from numerous friend reviews that they like listening because of you. So thank you, man. You as well, Jake. You keep it grinding. Jake's also our producer, so Jake produces it. So shout out to him. Thank you.
Yep, lots of work because of, we'll just say because of me.
Well, we were all perfect, so we had. With me, it was shaking off the cobwebs after a few years, and you guys, despite the edits that I had to do in the first episode, you guys were immaculate professionals despite being amateurs in something like this. So I commend you guys as well.
That's much appreciated.
Thank you. Well, to close it out, everybody's going to shout out their socials. Tell us more about yourself, Chris, when we make it to you. I'll start with my socials and my little fun gig. My Twitter is at XFL Insider POD. My YouTube is XFL Insider Podcast. I represent Ambush Sports as well as everyone in the podcast today. And that Twitter is at Ambush Sports. And the website is ambushsports.net. The podcast is produced by Jake. And Drew, Jake, and Chris are all staff members at Ambush Sports. And glad to have them today. So thank you, guys.
I think Ambush Sports has definitely been a place that's welcomed me with open arms. Came in, helped them fill a need. They've turned around by getting me, and really not just me, everybody involved with them, a lot of notice, getting media press credentials, really a lot of knowledge in Ambush Sports, and they're really starting to show it with the articles that we're posting, the podcast going on, really just a lot of positivity and a lot of forward momentum. So help us keep that at Ambush Sports. So on Twitter, they are at Ambush Sports. That is the actual sports network official Twitter. The Twitter for me is going to be Ambush Sports HOU for Houston. And then my Facebook page is Houston Roughnecks -Ambush Sports.
And you presented some great remarks there in your description there. I'm one of the original people that was on Ambush Sports back in 2020, and I'm just glad to see the people that were involved back then participating again, and then seeing new guys like yourselves, most of you guys having your first foray in sports journalism. So I've been glad to share any advice that I've given you guys so far, and I'm glad to be producer of this podcast. And it's a great moment. It's like we've really expanded it upon what we tried to do at Ambush a few years ago. So I thank you guys for that. As far as socials, I am on Twitter, Jake Leonard, JRN. I am on Facebook at Jake Leonard. And then outside of Ambush, I actually run my own news organization, which is Heartland Newsfeed. You can find that on heartlandnewsfeed.com. I run a sister radio network, Heartland Newsfeed Radio Network, that actually streams on our hosting platform. So you'll be able to check that up. Just look up Heartland Newsfeed Radio Network. Outside of that, just glad to be on as usual.
Hey, man, let me tell you guys what a heck of a ride it's been for the last 10 days for me. 10 days ago, I had a friend of mine who was writing articles for Ambush Sports, and you fast forward to today, and not only am I doing photography and having media credentials for the Dragons games, but I'm also doing this podcast. It's crazy. I was just a schmuck with a camera 10 days ago. Matt, you were kind enough to mention at the beginning of the show, I am a professional wrestler out here in the Pacific Northwest. I travel around. I get out of the state, but my predominant market is here in the Pacific Northwest, Washington State in particular. Hope you guys don't mind a little gratuitous self-promotion here. Wrestlers are notorious for it. So
we love it. We welcome it.
Real quick, on the socials, you can find me on Twitter at NWP Chris Marks. That's KRISMARX. On TikTok, my TikTok is like my big thing. I put a lot of stuff out on TikTok. I'm working on being a better content creator there, but you can find me at Chris Marks, again, KRISMARX. I'm the only one on TikTok as far as I know. You can find all the flyers for my shows, any appearances I'm doing, any companies I've worked for. You can find that on Facebook. That's just facebook.com/T as in Tom 1 Chris Marks. And then last one is Instagram. And my Instagram is KMarks_NWP. I'll be in Idaho on Saturday working a show for Wrestle Club at a festival, a kids festival. I work locally here for a company called Northwest Pro. Fantastic, family-friendly wrestling, old school storytelling. I'm also a competitor at Combat Pro Wrestling. Pacific Northwest is a hot marketplace right now. There's a lot of different pro wrestling out here. If you're a fan of it, indulge, because there's a lot to pick from. And then you can always find me here on the podcast when I'm invited. And then I'm also helping out a buddy of mine over on a podcast called Turnbuckle Turmoil. We interview a local or retired pro wrestler once a week over there too. And again, just want to say I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you guys and share whatever insight I have.
Hey, we appreciate it too. And when you're dealing with those kids, try to keep it out of the attitude era, okay? Like we can't be dropping bombs on kids.
Stone cold stunner.
Like I said, the predominant company I work for is Northwest Pro. We're 100% family friendly, except one show a year, and we make sure everybody knows about that ahead of time. But
that's awesome.
That doesn't mean that we can't have fun, and we definitely do.
Absolutely.
Hey, thank you all for coming on, Chris, you especially. I appreciate all you guys greatly. And like I said earlier, we were talking, XFL stands for more than just football. It's opportunity. As you see here, we all have the opportunity, amateur or pro level. We're all here, we're representing, and we're doing good work. And so we thank you, XFL, for the opportunity, and I'm sure everyone on this train is in the same regard.
Absolutely.
Lastly, I want to close by saying check for our podcast to come back out on Thursdays or Fridays every week. We record on Wednesday night. If you or anyone you know would like to be a guest, please reach out to any of the guys that were on or myself, and we'll get you on. As long as you have something valuable to add. My podcast is available on all major podcast stations except Google and Amazon right now. Still waiting for that approval. But check for us on Apple and Spotify, on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. XFL Insider Podcast. We're also available on xflboard.com. Check that out, xflboard.com. And I guess that's it, fellas. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week. Look forward to the games and Snowmageddon tomorrow.
And go Dragons. Got to say it right at the end. I mean, you guys. I'm sure you guys all have one of your own, but I got to.
Now that's a shameless plug.
Call us the law, Drew. Yeah, call us the law this time, even though Drew said it wasn't. It is this week.
Call was in fact the law for one time over the weekend. Hopefully, I don't have to say that too much. But I'll end this by saying call is not the law.
Drill, baby, drill.
Don't stand doing a certain thing, and don't throw lemons at people.
Yeah, and remember, Drew, it's not St. Louis.
Beer steaks.
It's Las Vegas is where we stand, not St. Louis. The St. Louis fans will come after you for that one. Thank you, guys. Have a great night. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Night, folks.